friends, and welcome to Nimisha Audiobooks. Bhagwad Geeta Chapter 2. The Yoga of Analysis. Sankhya Yoga. This second chapter is where the Bhagwad Geeta truly begins. Bhagwad Geeta literally means the song of Bhagwan, and Bhagwan means the absolute truth. Here, for the first time in Bhagwad Geeta, Sri Krishna is addressed as Bhagwan. According to Vedic scholars such as Parasara Muni, Bhagwan means one who possesses all wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. He that possesses the attributes of sovereignty, potency, fame, wealth, knowledge, and renunciation is known as Bhagwan. This is from Vishnu Puran. Additionally, Jiva Goswami, the 16th century Vaishnava philosopher, says that Bhagwan is Bhajanya, Gunaka, Ananta, Ka Nitya, he that possesses all adorable qualities and whose all attractive nature is such that he attracts our feelings of affection and adoration. In contemporary society, there is much debate as to whether God exists or not. First, it is necessary to define what we mean by God before his existence can be determined or dismissed. Accordingly, seers of the truth in the ancient India have concluded that if there is a God, then God must necessarily be the owner and proprietor of everything. He must be all-powerful, the most famous, the most beautiful, the possessor of all knowledge, and at the same time detached or renounced. After careful analysis, those seers of truth concluded that only Sri Krishna could be and is the ultimate fountainhead of reality, the absolute truth. These findings have been corroborated by many sages throughout the ages, from before 10,000 BCE, and are dealt with extensively in the Vedic literatures such as the Vedas, Upanishads, Puran, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Vedanta Sutra, Shreemad Bhagavatam, and Brahma Samhita, etc. Krishna is the supreme controller. His form is made of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. He is the origin of all. He is the master of the cows and the senses. He has no other origin, and he is the primeval cause of all the causes. The various avatars are either plenary expansions or parts of plenary expansions, but Krishna is the original source of all avatars. When impious elements disturbs his devotees, he manifests his ages after age in order to protect them. Only Sri Hari, Krishna, should be worshipped as the master of the entire universe. Brahma, Shiva, and all other demigods never violate this principle at any time. It is in the Padma Purana. When the Supreme Person descends in his human-like form, he is Krishna, the Supreme Brahman. Thus, Krishna is the Supreme Person. One should meditate on him. One should delight in him. One should worship him and make offerings to him. The verbal root refers to all attractive quality of Krishna, and the syllable refers to his spiritual bliss. When Kris is added to the affix na, it becomes the word Krishna, indicating the supreme truth. Arjun has become overwhelmed with compassion for those who are about to die on the battlefield. In fact, such in his grief that he himself is prepared to die rather than kill his enemies. But Arjun is a warrior and from a noble family. Therefore, Krishna advises Arjun against his weakness of heart. If one is a warrior, it is one's duty to face the enemy and not cower away. Fighting is indeed a nasty business, but when duty calls, such fighting may be unavoidable. In the ancient times, acts of aggression were abhorred and strictly forbidden in the society and between nations. When such aggressions did occur, retaliation and war were acceptable. According to the great sage Vasishtha, there are 6 types of aggressors, and according to Manu Samhita, these aggressors are to be met with lethal response. The arsonist who sets fire to one's house, one who administers poison, one who attacks with deadly weapons, one who usurps a nation's resources, one who invades and occupies a sovereign country, and one who kidnaps one's family members, all should be considered as aggressors. Without hesitation, a warrior should destroy aggressors, as there is no bad reaction in slaying them. These verses are according to the rules given in the laws of society. Arthashastra. Yet, the laws of Dharma, that is Dharma Shastra, which are superior to the Arthashastra, state that one should never inflict harm on any living being. What to say of one's family member and superior? This was Arjun's dilemma. Being a soft-hearted devotee of Sri Krishna, Arjun was disinclined to take up arms and against his family members. But being a warrior, he had to face his destiny. In this state of bewilderment, Arjuna decided to put aside his casual relationship with Krishna as a friend and accept Sri Krishna as his guru, that is, the spiritual master. Thus, Krishna accepted Arjun as a disciple. According to Vedic knowledge, there are numerous planets and parallel universes wherein life can be found. Some of these planets and universes have higher standards of living than we experience on Earth, and some are lower. If one performs one's prescribed duties in this life, then accordingly one is elevated to higher planets. However, if one neglects his duty, then only infamy and descending to lower planets awaits one in the next life. Krishna has used the word anarya, meaning non-Aryan, to describe Arjun's disinclination to follow his prescribed Vedic duties. For centuries, there has been much controversy about who is an Aryan and where the Aryans came from. For the most part, all such considerations have been based upon bodily designations in order to establish one race of people as superior to another. But in Bhagwad Geeta, according to the words of Sri Krishna, the Aryans are those who carry out their duties in accordance with the Vedic injunction. Thus, it is understood that the word Aryan does not pertain to a particular race of people, but to a conception of life and a way of living. Knowledge of the eternal existence of the infinite consciousness, Krishna, and the finite individual unit of unconsciousness, Atma or the Self, is the key to all Vedic wisdom. This will be the central theme of Krishna's instruction to Arjun in this chapter. Arjun is lamenting for the loss of the body, but Sri Krishna does not approve his lamentation and reminds Arjun that all living beings are eternal. Krishna says that he, Arjun, and all those present on the field of the battle are eternal personalities. They have existed eternally in the past and they will exist eternally in the future. Arjun is an accomplished student of Vedic thought and an associate of Sri Krishna. But for the benefit of those who will study this erudite conversation in the future, Arjun is feigning bewilderment and confusion just to encourage the discourse. Arjun is considered a liberated personality, and thus he is actually above ignorance and bewilderment. Although consciousness is eternal, the material body does not share this quality. The body passes through the stages of birth, childhood, youth, old age, disease, and death. At death, consciousness transfers to another body according to the laws of material nature, karma, and begins the cycle yet again. The ever-changing body never bewilders those who are cognizant on the difference between the material body and the consciousness. Embodied consciousness is said to have 5 stages, known as Panchakosha, Anannamaya, satisfying our existence by eating, as seen in children. Pranamaya, consciousness of preservation of one's body. Manomaya, the stage of mental awareness. Vijnanamaya, the cultivation of consciousness based on the higher knowledge. Understanding one is not this material body, and Anandamaya, cultivating part and parcel of Krishna. The first three stages, Anandamaya, Pranamaya, and Manomaya, pertaining to all the living beings that are caught in the doldrums of material sensed enjoyment. Vijanmaya and Anandamaya concerns those who have acquired knowledge of self-realization and perfection. Those who are asleep, simply absorbed in the bodily identification, never experience the world beyond their sense perception. Heat and cold, happiness and distress, pleasure and pain, birth and death, these are the perception of life experienced by those with no knowledge of consciousness. But those who are liberated from the bodily concept of life are awake in the conscious world and are always in balance. Even in the face of opposing and contradictory situations in the material world, they are undisturbed. Sri Krishna is reiterating the superiority of consciousness over matter. Since the time of Darwin, and even among some philosophers of ancient India, such as Carvak, up to the present day, these are those who think that life arises out of matter. The Big Bang Theory and other contemporary scientific ideas also support this opinion. However, the problem with such thinking is that there is no concrete evidence whatsoever to explain or demonstrate how lifeless matter ever developed the symptoms of life. The theory of evolution, as the Darwinians understood it, is substantially defeated in the fossil record, since no transitional species these that are supposed to reveal the gradual evolution of living organism from the primitive species to advanced life forms have ever been discovered. Furthermore, there is no suitable model to explain where matter originated. The numerous theories, new and ancient, that expound the life aroused from matter are fundamentally flawed in many ways. On the other hand, from observing microscopic living creatures to giant creatures like the elephant and whale, it is self-evident that life comes from life. Thus, the Vedic perspective on life is that all life comes from an intelligent life source, Sri Krishna. Scientific interest in finding the cause of the universe and indeed to all life is certainly laudable. Yet, when all reasonable and honest research leads us to the conclusion that life, consciousness, is not a byproduct of matter, and the blueprint of intelligent design can be observed everywhere and in all things, then it should also be intelligently concluded that superconsciousness is the cause of matter, the universe, and all the living things. It is sometimes thought that God or some source of higher intelligence has created life in the universe. But herein Sri Krishna expresses that the individual consciousness of a living being is never actually created. It exists and eternally as part and parcel of Krishna, as part and parcel of the superconsciousness. In the Vedic concept of the absolute truth, Krishna exists eternally along with his energies. Consciousness, by that measure, is never created. It simply exists eternally as part and parcel of the absolute truth. The characteristics of the consciousness are described as unborn, eternal, indestructible, and timeless. That which is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. The effects of time on the material body are perceived as growth, maintenance, byproducts, old age, dwindling, and death. But consciousness, being transcendental to matter, transcends time and therefore never grows old, dwindles, or dies. In certain religious traditions, the Creator is sometimes visualized as being an old man in the sky. He is naturally thought of as old, as he has fathered the universe a long time ago, and he is the oldest of all. But here again, the conception of Bhagwad Geeta differs dramatically. Consciousness is ever fresh and the source of consciousness. The superconscious being is always youthful and never old. Those who are engrossed in the material affairs and who ignore the wisdom of Bhagwad Geeta will find it very difficult to overcome the bodily concept of life and understand the difference between matter and consciousness. The transcendental nature of consciousness has been described in the verses. It cannot be cut, burned, or ever touched by water or air. However, the material body is subject to all of the above. Consciousness is described as eternal because it can never be destroyed. It is omnipresent because it animates and gives feeling to all parts of the body. It is unchanging because it never becomes anything other than what it is, pure consciousness. It is immovable because it does not change its constitutional position. It is primeval because it is the oldest of all. It is imperceptible because it lies beyond the range of the physical senses. It is inconceivable because it is beyond the speculative function of the mind. And it is immutable because it is a part and parcel of the absolute truth. The individual unit of consciousness is difficult to understand because it is transcendental, a non-material substance, and cannot be seen with the material sense or even with the world's most powerful microscope. It is atomic in size and can only be perceived through perfect intelligence. This atomic unit of consciousness is situated in the midst of the 5 kinds of subtle life airs within the body: Pran, Apna, Vyana, Saman, Udana. It is located within the heart and spreads its influence throughout the body. To give us some idea of the minuteness of the Atma and its positioning within the body, the Shvetavastra Upanishad and Mundaka Upanishad provide the following information. When the upper part of the hair is divided into 100 parts, and again each of those parts is further divided into 100 parts, each part is dimension of the Atma. The Atma is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic Atma is floating in the 5 kinds of airs. It is situated in the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living beings. When the Atma is purified from its contamination of the 5 kinds of material airs, its spiritual influence is exhibited. The cycle of birth and death is described as a natural phenomena for one who is embodied, although such a conception may be considered a fatalistic worldview. Both birth and death are an unwanted experience for the embodied consciousness. After experiencing life, no sane person wants to die. Everyone has the desire to live as long as possible. To that end, nowadays the producers of wonder drugs promises us eternal life, although no such life-giving cures exist at present. Everyone has to die, and before death comes, the wonder drugs and doctors' fees are sure to bankrupt the family fortune. However, death is an unnatural experience. The fact that everyone seeks everlasting life should be indicative that such a pure state of life exists beyond birth and death. Indeed, it does, and Sri Krishna will shed light on that subject as this chapter develops. Arjun's social position was that of Kshatriya, a member of warrior class. As such, it was Arjun's solemn duty to uphold righteousness and to protect the kingdom from aggressors. By law and social decree, Arjun and his brothers were the rightful heirs to the throne. Yet, the throne had been usurped by his uncle Dhritarashtra. Arjun, his wife Draupadi, his mother Kunti, and his brothers Yudhishthir, Bhim, Sahdev, and Nakul had all been forcibly exiled from the kingdom. Sri Krishna knows the temperament of Arjun very well, and therefore he is appealing to Arjuna's Kshatriya spirit to stand and fight. Krishna reminds Arjun that only shame awaits him if he neglects his duty. His enemies will speak ill of him and claim that he is a coward. Such neglect of his duty will lead to infamy, not to glory. A Kshatriya, when called to battle, should never abandon his duty and under any circumstances. Krishna tells Arjun that if he is killed in the battle while defending the kingdom, such an act of heroism will promote him to a higher status in his next life. Or Krishna says if he is victorious in battle, then he will regain the kingdom and enjoy life on earth. In any case, Krishna strongly encourages Arjun not to abandon his duty. The greatest fear that is mentioned in the above verse is the fear of losing the human form of life and taking birth in an animal body or lower. Some people think of the consciousness that is generally called Atma as being human and other Atma as being animal, etc. But in reality, no such distinction between a human Atma and an animal Atma exists. One transmigrates according to one's karma through many lower species of life and eventually arrives at a human stage. Human life offers one the opportunity of self-realization or the chance to cultivate spiritual knowledge and awareness. One who attempts to become self-realized is not always successful in one attempt or in one lifetime. However, Sri Krishna gives us the assurance that even a little endeavor on the path of self-realization will save us from the greatest fear, namely that of taking birth in a lower life form. The perfection of self-realization in the yoga system is called samadhi, or the complete absorption of our consciousness in the Supreme. The student of Bhakti Yoga achieves such a state of self-realization by following the instruction of Sri Krishna with steady determination. This state is only possible due to the great boon of having attained human form of life. However, if one neglects the opportunity of self-realization in human life, then one certainly runs the risk of sinking down into animal life or worse. It is sometimes argued that animals like cats and dogs have a better, more comfortable life than many humans, and that is certainly true for many cats and dogs in Western countries. But there is no guarantee that in losing the human form of life, one will become a dog or a cat and can be taken care of by a rich American family. One may become an animal that is eaten alive by wild beasts or torn apart by predators in the sea. Certainly, it goes without saying that such a life and death is full of suffering. Therefore, to avoid the unnecessary suffering found in the animal life, a person who has achieved the human platform should, with great determination and diligence, pursue the path of realization as outlined in Bhagwad Geeta. To be situated in the transcendence means to be liberated from the three modes of material nature, the modes of ignorance, passion, and goodness. Yoga is the practice of becoming situated between the modes of nature. Everyone in the material world is under the three modes of nature, and only a true yogi can surpass these modes. Our activities are categorized in three ways: as action prescribed by the Vedas, karma; unauthorized action, vikarma; and transcendental action, akarma. Karma means those activities that derive a good result and sometimes promote one to a higher planet or higher standards of living. Vikarma are those activities that are against the Vedic injunctions and cause suffering to the self and to other living creatures. Akarma means those activities that have neither good nor bad reaction. One who is wise and who knows the science of yoga always strives to perform the activities of akarma. Such yogis are known as bhakti yogis and can easily situate themselves in transcendence. Other systems of yoga such as Ashtanga Yoga, Raja Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, Hatha Yoga, and Kriya Yoga can also reach transcendence, but the path is very difficult, especially in this modern age. Sri Krishna is known as Yogeshwara, the Supreme Master of Yoga. And although Bhagwad Geeta discusses other yoga system, it is the Bhakti Yoga system that Krishna ultimately recommends. The yogi situated in Bhakti Yoga is always engaged in devotional activities to satisfy the Supreme Master of Yoga, Sri Krishna. Thus, the Bhakti Yoga is always in complete control of his senses. Without control of the sense, no one can perform meditation or engage in his spiritual practices properly. Therefore, the Bhakti Yoga is the topmost yogi because he is engaged in the topmost yoga system. There are 8 mystical perfections of yoga known as the Ashtasiddhi. These perfections are becoming very small, Anima Siddhi, becoming lighter than air, Laghima Siddhi, being able to retrieve anything from anywhere, such as extending one's hand while in New York and picking a mango growing in India, Prapti Siddhi, or become heavier than the heaviest, Mahima Siddhi, to create something wonderful or to destroy anything at will, Istiva Siddhi, to control the material elements, Vasitva Siddhi, the ability to fulfill at once desire, Prakamya Siddhi, and the ability to assume any one from one wishes, Kama Vasitya Siddhi. As the master of yoga, Krishna has these 8 yoga perfections in full. It is sometimes claimed by yogis that they have achieved one or more of these Ashtasiddhis, and such seems to have been relatively common in ancient times. But in modern times, the claim of having one of the Ashtasiddhis and such seems to have been relatively common in ancient times. But in modern times, the claim of having one of the Ashtasiddhi more often than not turns out to be fraudulent or simply a show to attract many followers. With the rise in popularity of yoga, false claims of Ashtasiddhi have become a lucrative business. A higher aspiration for the yogi is not the achievement of the Ashtasiddhi, but the achievement of Samadhi in Bhakti Yoga, because such achievement frees one from the cycle of birth and death. As previously stated, there are numerous yoga systems. Sri Krishna states unequivocally that by the system of withdrawing one's sense from the objects of the senses, namely sound, touch, taste, smell, and sight, for sense satisfaction and concentrating the mind on him, one becomes firmly situated in divine knowledge and samadhi. Simply suspending the senses without positive engagement for advancing in spiritual life is not very profitable. Many yogis have tried giving up sense activities altogether, but because the taste or attachment for sense objects remains, many have fallen down in their attempts. However, the sense of the Bhakti yogi who follows Krishna's direction are safeguarded because the senses are engaged 24 hours a day in Krishna's service. As such, the taste for sensual satisfaction gradually dries up and disappears, leaving the Bhakti Yoga free to advance spiritually. One who cannot control the senses cannot concentrate on the mind. Additionally, the senses are never actually satisfied by material engagement. The senses become satisfied for some time, but then again become stimulated with an ever greater avarice. Those who are servants of the bodily senses can never become masters of the self. Being fully absorbed in the pure spiritual consciousness or samadhi means to be conscious of Krishna as the Supreme Person. Such absorption of the mind and sense in Krishna is called Krishna consciousness. Unfortunately, there are many charlatan yogis who, for the sake of money and gaining disciples, give their so-called blessings, advocating that there is no need to follow any particular practice of sense control, such as non-violent diet, sexual abstinence, or avoiding intoxication, etc. Such charlatans cheat and mislead their followers into thinking that they themselves are God and they can enjoy whatever their sense fancy. But fair warning is given here. Such uncontrolled sense activities lead not to divine grace or divine wisdom, but to attachment, then increased desire, then anger, then delusion, bewilderment, loss of intelligence, and ultimately to destruction. The highest achievement by accepting the instruction of Sri Krishna in Bhagwad Geeta is given here. 1. Who does so at the time of death attains Brahma Nirvayam, the spiritual planets of Vaikuntha and the mitigation of all suffering. According to the knowledge of self-realized souls, the absolute truth has three stages of realization: Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan. The seers that know the absolute truth call his non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma or Bhagwan. Brahman means attaining the impersonal light experience of or effulgence of the Absolute. The word Brahman is found throughout the Vedic literature and according to the scholars of Bhakti Yoga, ultimately means Vishnu or Krishna. The Buddhist philosophers take nirvana to be end of the material life and entering into the void, but Bhagwad Geeta teaches differently. In the Vedic teachings, there is no void anywhere. Everything is the energy of the absolute truth, and no existence or non-existence is reconcilable outside of that. According to the prominent sages of Bhakti Yoga, Visvanta Chakravarti translates Brahma Nirvanam as liberation. His disciple Baldeva understands Brahma Nirvanam as Paramatma, who is Vishnu, the form of liberation. Ramanuja takes Brahma as the Atma and Nirvanam as full of happiness. Madhav takes Brahma Nirvanam as Vishnu Krishna without a material form. Bhakti Rakshaka Sridhar Maharaja takes Brahma Nirvanam as the freedom from material bondage, and A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada takes Brahma Nirvanam as meaning the kingdom of Vishnu or Krishna. In all cases, the devotees of Krishna never accept liberation in the impersonal state of Brahma or Brahman or the void, because they are only interested in the service to Krishna and are already liberated. Paramatma means realization of the absolute situated in the hearts of all living things, the maintainer of the universe being situated within and in between every particle of the matter. Bhagwan is the realization of the personal aspect of the absolute truth and is considered to be the ultimate stage of self-realization, because in that stage one realizes the absolute truth in toto as Krishna, the fountainhead of all the energies. The abode of Krishna is known as Vaikuntha or Goloka, Vrindavan. Furthermore, verse 71 refers to ahankar or the false ego that is attached to consciousness when driven by the modes of material nature. False ego presupposes the existence of real ego, that real ego being the pure consciousness of a living being. Thinking oneself to be the material body or thinking oneself to be the enjoyer of the senses is the cause and the effect of false ego. Such false ego never leads to enlightenment, but to repeated births and deaths in the cycle of samsara. The false ego is like a shadow of darkness and covers pure consciousness. The pure ego is non-different from pure consciousness itself. Pure ego is to realize oneself as part and parcel of the absolute truth and eternal servants of Krishna. Om Tat Sat. Thus ends chapter 2 entitled Sankhya Yoga from the conversation between Sri Krishna and Arjun in the Upanishad known as Shreemad Bhagwad Geeta, the Yoga Shastra of divine knowledge, from the Bhishma Parva of Mahabharata, the literature revealed by Vyasa in 100,000 verses. Thank you so much for listening to Nimisha Audiobooks.